All right, now with all of this stuff going on, it's not looking good for the WNBA right now. I will say it is helping that Unrivaled's ratings are absolutely atrocious and embarrassing. But all in all, it seems like a lot of these ladies that the WNBA has helped, because at the end of the day, they have not been making money.
What people are missing right now, or pretending not to see, is that what's happening inside the WNBA is not just another flare-up of drama, not another social media-driven controversy, not even a typical labor dispute dressed up as player empowerment. This is something far more dangerous, far more consequential, and far more irreversible if it goes wrong. The league is standing on the edge of a moment it spent nearly 3 decades chasing, and instead of locking arms to protect it, the people inside the house are arguing over who deserves credit for the roof while the foundation quietly cracks beneath them. The WNBA has never been here before. Not in 1997. Not after its early expansion. Not during its lowest-rated seasons. Not even during the pandemic, when survival itself was the goal. This moment is different because for the first time, the league didn't have to explain why it mattered. People simply paid attention. They watched. They showed up. They argued. They cared. That shift didn't come from a rebrand, a marketing slogan, or a committee-approved initiative. It came from one singular cultural shockwave that forced the sports world to look in a direction it had historically ignored. Caitlin Clark didn't arrive as just another talented rookie. She arrived as a gravitational force that bent the league's entire ecosystem around her presence. Games became national talking points. Draft night became must-see television. Road arenas turned into sellouts. Broadcast windows suddenly mattered. And for the first time, the WNBA wasn't competing for relevance, it had it. That's the context people keep stripping away when they reduce this moment to players asking for their fair share. Fairness only exists inside a system that can...
One is, okay, the WNBA and WNBPA agreed on a groundbreaking CBA in 2020, okay? So they agreed on that CBA. That was cool.
Enough to deliver it. What's happening now is a league negotiating as if relevance is permanent, as if momentum cannot be lost, as if cultural attention, the rarest currency in modern sports, is something you can bank indefinitely without protecting the conditions that created it. History says otherwise. Leagues don't usually die because of one bad decision, they die because of a series of overconfident assumptions made at the exact moment restraint was required. The WNBA has already lived through near-death before. During the pandemic, it was staring directly at extinction, and survival required uncomfortable compromise. Players were frustrated. Owners were bleeding money. The league was one bad decision away from disappearing entirely. That crisis should have permanently shaped the league's instincts. Instead, it seems to have been forgotten the moment the spotlight returned. The irony is brutal. The same league that once begged players to keep the doors open is now being pushed toward the edge again, not by external neglect, but by internal miscalculation. And the most dangerous part is that this time, there's something real to lose. In 2020, the WNBA was fighting to exist. In 2024 and beyond, it's fighting to matter. Those are not the same battle. Relevance is harder to build than survival, and infinitely easier to destroy. The current standoff between the league and the Players Association is unfolding as if leverage exists in a vacuum, as if numbers on a spreadsheet tell the whole story. They don't. Leverage only exists as long as the underlying product holds public interest. And public interest is fickle. It doesn't care about internal grievances. It doesn't reward infighting. It doesn't stay loyal out of principle. It follows stars, narratives, and moments that feel authentic. Caitlin Clark created that moment, whether people are comfortable admitting it or not. And
20, the WNBA announced the bubble season. Now that was during a crazy time in the world. They started the wobble and they played games. And Kathy Engelbert, for y'all that don't know, Kathy Engelbert had to
instead of recognizing how fragile that breakthrough is, The league has allowed an environment to form where resentment, entitlement, and ideological posturing threaten to suffocate the very thing that made growth possible. This isn't about worshiping one player. It's about understanding causality. The attention didn't rise evenly across the league, it surged through one entry point and spread outward. That distinction matters because it means the current momentum is not self-sustaining. It requires care. It requires protection. It requires alignment. And yet, what we're watching instead is a slow-motion unraveling where every side believes it holds all the leverage, even as the most valuable asset in the entire ecosystem quietly evaluates whether this is worth enduring at all. That's the real crisis. Not money. Not contracts. Not optics. The crisis is that the league finally got what it always wanted, and now doesn't seem to know how to keep it from slipping through.
These players to play, or there would be no more WNBA. A lot of these players wanted all of their money up front plus extra. Kathy Engelberg got that done. A lot of these players was willing to let this league.
Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud, because once you say it, the entire negotiation narrative collapses. The WNBA isn't arguing from a position of unified strength, it's arguing from a position of fractured power, misread leverage, and financial complexity that most players and fans don't fully understand. This league is not one entity with one set of incentives. It's a patchwork system stitched together by owners who do not share the same risk tolerance, the same financial goals, or even the same vision for what the WNBA is supposed to be. Over the last few years, the league quietly transformed from a centralized, survival-focused operation into a three-headed ownership structure with competing priorities, and that shift fundamentally altered how negotiations work. Some owners are willing to spend aggressively, absorb losses, and treat the WNBA as a long-term brand investment. Others are tied to NBA franchises that view the WNBA as a complementary asset, valuable but secondary. And then there are outside investors, equity holders whose primary concern is return on investment, not cultural impact or player sentiment. That matters because collective bargaining doesn't happen in theory, it happens inside financial reality. When the league raised capital and gave up a meaningful equity stake, it didn't just gain cash, it gave up simplicity. Every major decision now has to satisfy multiple power centers, and those power centers do not all benefit equally from higher salaries, looser caps, or unlimited free agency. The Players Association is negotiating as if the league is a monolith flush with guaranteed money, when in reality it's a coalition that still relies heavily.
Because that shift the balance in power between the private owners that just own WNBA teams and the owners that own WNBA, NBA teams, and now you have this investor group in that situation, that extra 16% that shift the balance in power. Something else that happened was a Liberty were fined for illicit chartering. Now, being that
on a small number of revenue drivers to justify its growth strategy. This is where the miscalculation becomes dangerous. The recent influx of money did not come from organic, evenly distributed fan growth across all markets. It came from a sudden surge in national attention tied to a very specific storyline that made broadcasters, sponsors, and advertisers believe the league had crossed a threshold into mainstream relevance. That belief is fragile. It's conditional. It depends on sustained viewership, star-driven narratives, and public goodwill. When players demand structural changes that dramatically increase costs without acknowledging how concentrated the league's revenue actually is, they aren't flexing leverage, they're testing the patience of the very people underwriting the league's future. And patience is not infinite. Especially among investors who didn't sign up to subsidize ideological battles or internal resentment. What makes this moment even more volatile is the visible gap between ownership groups. Some franchises are racing ahead, building facilities, upgrading operations, treating players like elite professionals, while others are barely keeping pace. That imbalance creates internal tension that no CBA can magically erase. You can mandate higher salaries, but you can't force equal ambition. You can loosen restrictions, but you can't manufacture owners willing to lose money indefinitely. The league's recent history is filled with examples of what happens when spending outpaces sustainable growth, and pretending that reality no longer applies is the fastest way to repeat it. The Players Association believes the league has finally made it. The owners know the truth is more complicated. And that gap in perception is why these negotiations feel stuck, because one side is negotiating as if collapse is impossible, while the other knows exactly how close the league has come before. This isn't a standoff between equals. It's a standoff between optimism. And this is where the conversation stops being theoretical and starts becoming existential, because buried underneath spreadsheets, bargaining language, and public statements is the one variable that shatters every assumption the league and the Players Association are currently operating under. Caitlin Clark does not need the WNBA in the same way the WNBA needs Caitlin Clark. That asymmetry changes everything, and pretending it doesn't is the most dangerous delusion of this entire standoff. Clark is not trapped by the league's ecosystem, she transcends it. She has global marketability, endorsement power, international options, and a brand that exists independently of any single uniform. The league's recent financial explosion did not happen in isolation. It happened because one player turned regular season games into national events and made casual viewers care enough to show up consistently. That attention wasn't evenly distributed across the league, it flowed through her presence.